Twice in 3 days, Boston College will have to find another coach as one of their assistants is heading again to the NFL. We'll talk about this and a lot more on today's Locked On Boston College.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Boston College. I am your host, AJ Black. Today's episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit RockAutocom and tell them Locked On sent you. So, over the weekend, we learned that offensive line coach Matt Applebaum was heading to the NFL to join the Miami Dolphins. Monday, the second shoe dropped as Joe Daly, Boston College's wide receiver coach, was hired by the Carolina Panthers for the same role. Now, Daly, he was a guy that many of us had thought may be a name that we saw in Boston College's offensive coordinator search. He was their wide receivers coach, but had experience in previous stops as the offensive coordinator for both New Mexico and Liberty. Now, he is a New Jersey guy. He came here with big northern New Jersey roots. He's from St. Peter's Prep, one of the best programs that has brought a ton of talent to Boston College. And there was a lot of excitement. He was a young coach. He's a quarterback from Nebraska. Now he's gone. Now, this is the second move that makes you start to wonder, is this the offensive coordinator shaking up his staff? Or is this just the natural ebb and flow of what coaching things happen when you have coaches that are well sought after? Now, Daly, he had a lot of success. I mean, you look at what BC's wide receiver group did in 2020. They were third in the ACC in receiving yards. Just a year after, a disastrous offensive season for BC, he made them into a very, very, adequate to good group in that 2020 year. You saw Zay Flowers bust on the scene. He talked a lot last year about how the offense changed his usage from just jet sweeps to a full complement of weapons that he could provide that offense. And then you saw Zay Flowers as a deep ball receiver and using his speed. A lot of that goes to Frank Cignetti, the offensive coordinator, and obviously a lot of it goes to Zay Flowers for just his natural skills. But you also have to give credit to Joe Daly for developing him. And he's not the only one that Joe Daly has really helped develop. Look at some of the other wide receivers that have come up over the last couple of years that have really solidified their spot because of Daly. You saw, C.J. Lewis last year. C.J. Lewis was a wide receiver that was barely ever used under Steve Addazio. I mean, if you talked to me before the 2020 season, I would have put C.J. Lewis near the bottom of the list because he just was never used. And then all of a sudden he becomes, the offense figures out a way to use his skill sets. He becomes a red zone threat. He's got good length. All of a sudden he becomes good. This year, you see it with Jaden Williams, a true freshman that many did not talk about, all of a sudden busts into the starting lineup and scores, I think, 3 to 5 touchdowns this year. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but he was, a very valuable wide receiver, especially when Djokovic was in there. He was either the number 2 or the number 3 guy. So you have all of these wide receivers. Then you include guys like Jalen Gill, who kind of meshed in, and you see what this wide receiver coach had been able to do. Now, in terms of recruiting, Joe Daly was very important because he hit that northern Jersey area and gave BC a real legitimate Jersey guy to complement Jeff Hafley, who's obviously from the area as well. He was very important in the recruitment of Peter Delaportis, and Joe, who is from the Jersey area. He did wide receiver recruitments of guys like Lewis Bond, Joseph Griffin III, Isaiah Zamore. So a lot of guys, but Joe Daly was very important in their recruitment. So he's gone. And so you wonder, is this McNulty, either he's looking to, move his guys in or move guys in that are more of a fit for him? I'm not sure. I don't know how that often happens in college football. I don't think it usually does. So I'm more on the lines that these are guys that fit NFL quality teams. Like, Mike McDaniel at Miami, he needed an offensive line coach, and I don't think that Jeff Hafley was lying last year when he said that Matt Applebaum had an NFL offer. And so this would be the second 2 years. I mean, it makes sense. And for someone who looks at analytics, if you went and looked at Pro Football Focus, you would see the offensive line getting huge numbers. They were guys that, all of them graded 70 or above. You had some of the best in the country. As much as it was frustrating at times, they graded out well. And someone who's an analytic head like Mike McDaniels might see that and say, whoa. Then you look at the wide receivers and you see Zay Flowers on the TV all the time. You see, all the positive press about their passing game when Djokovic's healthy. You look at a guy like Joe Daly, who maybe he's looking to get into the NFL to continue to develop, again, just like Jeff Hafley did. Then you understand, oh, okay, that might be why they're doing this. So I am not on the mind that these guys are fleeing the scene or McNulty wants his own guys. I still think Boston College will probably go outside the organization to get an offensive line coach. Now, in a minute, I'm going to tell you what I think they're going to probably do to fill Joe Daly's role. But before we do that, let me ask you, is this your first time listening to Locked On Boston College? How do you like it? I hope you do enjoy it. I do this 5 days a week, and I do it because I love it. I love talking Boston College sports. It's my gift and my curse. And for those of you that have made this your first listen, I want to thank each and every one of you. But for you who have maybe just turned in, maybe you found us on YouTube, maybe you found us searching Spotify, welcome. I'm AJ Black. I'm the host and editor of the show, and I'm the editor and publisher of BC Bulletin. It's part of the Sports Illustrated and Fan Nation Network. I've been covering Boston College for years. I love Boston College sports. It really gives me a lot of pride to talk about. So if you like this, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and make this part of your daily routine. I'm sure we'll have a lot of fun together. Well, football is over, but basketball is full steam for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the #1 spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds, right to the Olympic coverage and information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. Head on over to BetOnline, where the game starts. This is Locked On Boston College. I am your host, AJ Black. Happy Tuesday, everyone. We're talking about Joe Daly, who's heading to the Carolina Panthers. He's going to be joining Matt Rule's staff, and he's leaving Boston College. He's the third coach leaving Boston College this offseason. Just a year after BC made the entire offseason without losing a coach, they have lost 3 of their offensive coaches, only keeping so far Steve Shimko, their tight ends coach, and Richie Gunnell, the running backs coach. So that begs the question. Now that you have John McNulty as your new offensive coordinator, you have 2 open spots, and then you have Gunnell and Shimko. Where do you go next with this coaching staff? On yesterday's show, for the offensive line, I gave you some options of coaches I thought Boston College could get involved with. Someone else just mentioned Jack Bicknell Jr. For all of you older Boston College fans that remember Jack Bicknell Sr., that's his son. He's the offensive line coach for Louisville. He has experience at Boston College as well. I have a hard time seeing Boston College pulling a coach like that away from a school like Louisville, where I assume they're going to pay more money. I mean, let's call a spade here. Boston College is not, a school that's going to outbid other schools. So he's just a name that I heard people throw out there, but I don't think it's very realistic. Now, what do we do about the wide receiver coach? What does Boston College do? Do they go outside the organization and add a new name, or do they look within? And I think, honestly, there's a really easy solution right on the staff. And here's what Boston College could do. So Jeff Hafley could look at his roster, and he already has a wide receiver coach on his team that has experience at that position and could do that role as easy as anyone else. That's Richie Gunnell. Obviously, Richie Gunnell was a wide receiver for Boston College. He was a wide receivers coach under Steve Addazio, and then when Jeff Hafley kept him on board after Addazio was canned, they moved him over to running back. Now, Gunnell, I'm sure, enjoys getting that rich experience of going to different positions. You want, as a coach, to try different things because that can help you build your resume, right? So, but it wouldn't be the worst thing to go back to wide receivers. And it honestly probably would raise his profile a little bit. If he gets put with Zay Flowers and Jalen Gill and Jaden Williams, you're going to have some really excellent wide receivers to work with. And your name is going to get brought up a lot more than you are with, Pat Garwo running a little bit. You know what I mean? So I think you move Richie Gunnell from running backs coach to wide receivers coach. Easy peasy. But then you have another spot to fill. So who do you put at running backs? Do you go outside the organization? No, because if you look on the roster, there is a perfect fit that deals with a lot of the issues that happen when when Daly leaves. So Daly is your New Jersey guy. You have a New Jersey guy there. His name is Savon Huggins. Now, if you didn't listen, I think he came around like August or September of last year. He is a former Rutgers running back who was a running backs coach, set to be a running backs coach with UMass. He is one of the assistants on the team, so that's like even below the positional coach. But he's like an ace. He's a good recruiter. He's got Jersey tie-ins. He would fit in perfectly at running back. And that's the way you want to build it, right? You want to, if you have guys on your roster that can be promoted and coach at the level that you want them to, you do that. And guys like Huggins are dying to get that next step, I'm sure. I'm sure he wants to be a positional coach so he can take the next step and the next step from there. He needs that opportunity. So Jeff Hafley doesn't even need to look outside the school to fill these positions. You just move the two guys. You move Gunnell from running back to wide receiver, and you move Savon Huggins to running backs coach from an assistant. And then you have Huggins recruit the same area that Joe Daly was recruiting, right? He's a Northern Jersey guy. Huggins is a New Jersey guy. Boom. You have all your bases covered here by just making a small adjustment. So if I was a betting man, and I had someone say to me, AJ, you've been nailing some of these recruits. Give me some predictions on blah, 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 blah. Here's my prediction here. That's exactly what's going to happen. They're going to shift Gunnell over, and they're going to move Huggins over. I'm not 100% sure on this, and this is just my gut and intuition. I don't know anything from the staff or anything like that. So if the staff's listening, I don't know anything. I'm just telling you what my gut, looking at this roster, this makes the most sense to me. And I think it would work. You get your running back, and Savon Huggins, I mean, he was, I believe, a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. He's one of the biggest names in New Jersey history. One of the biggest, recruits Rutgers ever landed. You need a big ace in there. And this sounds silly to beat a team like Rutgers because Greg Schiano's recruiting his butt off down there in Rutgers. So a guy like Savon Huggins, he could be the guy that takes that next step and brings that Jersey recruiting up a little bit too. So we'll have to wait and see. And Jason Baum just tweeted out earlier today the dates of practice. So we should be able to get a name of these names starting pretty soon because practice is going to start in 12 days. He says practice starts on February 26th with April 9th being the Jay McGillis game at 11. So, you had 12 days now to figure this out because you need to get when you bring your roster on for spring practice, you need to do your positional stuff and things like that. You need those positional coaches for that. So, I know the offensive coordinator thing probably took about 2 weeks. I'd expect these two new names or the positional changes to happen relatively quickly because you don't want a new coach on February 25th because they're going to need to meet with Hafley. They're going to need to plan out what their role, what their practices are going to look like. They're going to need to talk about strategy and workout sets and playbook stuff. You're going to need to get all of that laid out with the coaching staff. And, where do you implement this, and this? So he's going to have to get them in pretty quickly. And that kind of stinks, but hopefully he has I'm assuming Jeff Hafley has some ideas of who he's going to get. Well, in just a moment, we're going to chat about the Olympics, and I'm going to give you an update on the men and women's hockey team and how some of Boston College's players in the Olympics. Ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questions while you wait for someone behind the counter order to make these parts for you or to order them for you? Choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry. You have computers with access to RockAuto.com at home and in your pocket, so use it. Save time and money when using RockAuto.com. They save you 30, 50, or even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership. Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Prices are reliably low for everyone, and you can save on everything including brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. So go to RockAuto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. And make sure to write Locked On in their How'd You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. RockAuto.com. This is Locked On Boston College. AJ Black here. Trying to talk some Olympics. And we, it's so funny. This Olympics season has been one of the most understated. There's just been no buzz about it. I don't know if it was because it's in Beijing, if because they're in the midst of a pandemic, if all the garbage that's going on with the Russians and the ROC and their doping scandals. I don't know if that has to do with it. My wife is like really into this stuff, but no one else seems to care. And there's been some really good U.S. performances. And today we're going to talk about one of the two of the teams that really have a lot to prove heading into this final week. Now, first of all, we have the women's hockey team. Women's hockey is on a roll. They are undefeated, and they are about to go play Team Canada for the gold medal. Now, Team Canada is one of the best teams. It is easily the best team in the world. They are on a absolute tear, outscoring teams 58-4. U.S. has lost. U.S. lost to Canada 4-2 in the preliminary round to Canada. Now, Boston College has some links to this game. Alex Carpenter, she has 6 points in the Olympics, which puts her good for 18th in the world in points. You look at the points and who's leading. It's like all number 1 through 6, are all Canadians. Alex Carpenter's up there for the U.S. It's going to be a heck of a game for U.S. to try to come back and beat the Canadian team. Canada's led by Sarah Nurse, who has 4 goals and 12 assists. And then Brianne Jenner has 9 goals for the Canadians. It's an excellent game. And if you don't know the history between U.S. and the women's and the Canadians, they have a long, long history. And last time they played, the U.S. won on shootouts in the gold medal game, 3-2. So there's a huge history here, and this is like 2 of the best rivals in Olympic sports. So really, if you are a fan of hockey, check out the women's hockey game against the Canadians on Wednesday. It's an 11 p.m. start on Wednesday night, and you can check that out wherever you get your Olympics. And then the men's hockey team, there's obviously 3 men's hockey players in the Olympics: Jack McBain, Mark McLaughlin, and Drew Hellison. 2 with the Americans, 1 with the Canadians. Now, the men's hockey team, they've been on a roll. They beat Canada a couple days ago, and then they just beat Germany on Sunday. So they're on an absolute tear, and they've secured the top spot in the quarterfinals. So, keep your eyes open on that. Now, have you been watching the Olympics? What's your favorite sport? I mean, hockey is obviously a lot of fun to watch. My parents always rip on me for watching curling. But I also enjoy skiing. I'm a skier myself, but I obviously can't ski the speed that they do. So that was our Olympic coverage. I don't know if anyone's actually interested. I'm interested to know what your thoughts are on the Olympics. I like the Summer Olympics a lot more. With track and field, those are like the 100 and some of the swimming events. They're a lot more interesting to me. I don't get into like the figure skating and bobsledding. It just doesn't hold my attention. And then final hockey news: BC's winless streak is expanded to 11 as they tied Harvard. So I guess step in the right direction. But because the way that the Beanpot rules work, they don't get any points out of it because it was a tie. BC had a 3-1 lead and then let up 2 goals and ended up not being able to end the game with the win. So we'll have to keep waiting. BC continues to slide. They get a point for a tie, but no victory there. All right, this is AJ Black. Thank you all for listening to our show today. If you enjoyed it, I'd like you to take a pause on the podcast for a second. Go over to youtube.com, look up Locked On Boston College. If you have an account on YouTube, they're free. If you have Gmail, they're automatically signed you up for it. You may not even have known that. All you have to do is hit subscribe. It's an easy way to help us get our podcast out, because the more of you that subscribe to that channel, the more likely more people will find it if they look up Boston College. So if you enjoy my work, it's the easiest and it's free way to say thank you. So just head over to youtube.com, Locked On Boston College. Find us, hit subscribe, like a few videos. It makes a world of difference for the podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at AJBlack_BC. You can follow Locked On BC at Twitter. And I'm on Facebook, Instagram. Just look up BC Bulletin wherever you get your social media stuff, and we'll see you all again soon. Take care, everyone.